Welcome back to Life Pages. In today's story, we're diving into the life of a man named Jim, who's been on a rough road for quite some time. But when life throws him an unexpected twist, everything changes. So, let's begin. Jim surveyed his cluttered home, feeling a familiar wave of frustration. Countless times he had promised himself that he would clean up, but those thoughts only surfaced in the mornings before work. By evening, the routine was set. He'd come home, grab a bottle of vodka, drink himself into oblivion, and pass out. It had been this way for over a year, ever since Amanda, his girlfriend, had left him for a better life in the city. Jim had met Amanda at a dance in a neighbouring village, where he'd immediately caught her attention with his good looks and reputation as the best operator of any farm machinery in the area. He was a catch. The girls in the village admired him, and the other men envied his skill and the money he earned. Jim lived alone, having been raised by his grandmother, who passed away shortly after he turned 18. Despite his skills, no one had expected him to return to the village after completing his training, but he did. He built a big house, worked tirelessly, and avoided distractions, determined to build a stable life before considering marriage. Amanda changed everything. She was beautiful and captivating, and when she showed interest in Jim, he was smitten. They married quickly, and Jim spared no effort in spoiling her with gifts, giving her a life she had only dreamed of. But Amanda wasn't satisfied with life in the village. She grew restless, longing for the excitement of the city. One day she confronted Jim about their future. "How long are we going to stay stuck in this place? Everyone's moving forward, leaving this village behind while we're just rotting away," she said. Jim was taken aback. "I never said I wanted to move to the city, and you didn't either. Where is this coming from all of a sudden?" he asked. Amanda's frustration spilled over. "I can't spend my whole life here, Jim. There's more to life than this. I want theatres, cafes, culture, things we can't find here." They fought that day, and though they made up, the issue was never truly resolved. 3 weeks later, Jim came home from work to find Amanda gone, leaving only a note. She had met someone who understood her, she wrote, and was moving to the city. To add insult to injury, she took the money Jim had saved, calling it compensation for wasting her best years. From that day on, Jim's life spiraled downward. He sold off his farm equipment, neglected his house, and turned to alcohol to numb the pain. His work began to suffer, and he started getting warnings for showing up hungover. Jim didn't care. He was just going through the motions, lost in his grief. One bitterly cold morning, as Jim prepared to leave for work, he heard an unfamiliar voice behind him. He turned to see a young woman with a small child huddled close to her. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling. "Could you tell me if there's anyone who could give us shelter? Little Johnny is exhausted, and we don't have any money." Jim studied the woman, noting her thin, emaciated appearance and the child's frail frame, knowing the village folk would likely turn them away. He made a quick decision. Handing her his house keys, he said, "Here, take these, go to my place, it's warm inside, and there should be some food. Just don't go outside or people will start asking questions. I'll be back after 6 p.m. Without waiting for her response, Jim hurried off to work. The day passed quickly, but as evening approached, he grew concerned. What if the woman and child had taken advantage of his kindness? Stopping at the store, he picked up his usual bottle of vodka, adding some candy for the child. As he approached his house, he noticed lights on inside, something he hadn't seen in a long time. Peering through the window, Jim was stunned. The house was clean and tidy, and the woman was sitting on the couch, reading a book to the child. The smell of hot food wafted through the air, reminding Jim of a time when he still had hope for a happy family life. He glanced at the bottle in his hand, then quickly shoved it into the snow outside. When he entered the house, the young woman jumped up, blushing. "Hello, sorry. Johnny and I did a bit of cleaning. I made dinner, she said nervously. Jim was taken aback. He had expected a vagabond, but instead, he found a lovely young woman who had transformed his home. I wouldn't say no to dinner, I'm starving, he replied. As they ate, Jim learned more about his guests. The woman, named Sarah, had trusted the wrong man in her youth, leading to the birth of Johnny. She had returned to her mother's house, only to be treated poorly by her stepfather, who eventually decided she would make a better wife than her aging mother. Sarah had fled with Johnny when her mother turned against her, fearing they would lose their home and security. Jim listened quietly, his heart softening as Sarah shared her story. You can stay here as long as you need, he said. We'll figure something out. In the days that followed, Jim's life began to change. He no longer felt the need to drink, instead spending his evenings with Johnny, playing games and reading stories. The house, once cold and empty, was now warm and filled with laughter. Jim couldn't help but feel that this was the life he had always wanted, though he knew it wasn't truly his. Then, one day, as Jim hurried home from work, a neighbor called out to him, "Hey Jim, congratulations. Amanda's back." Jim froze. Amanda? Here. Panic surged through him as he raced home, only to find Amanda sitting on the couch, looking smug and confident. "Where's the joy at our reunion?" she asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Jim's heart sank. "Where are they?" he demanded, his voice harsh. Amanda feigned innocence. "I don't know, they left, probably went back to wherever they came from." Without another word, Jim stormed out of the house, fear and anger fueling his every step. He knew he had to find Sarah and Johnny before something terrible happened. He borrowed a neighbor's SUV and drove through the night, searching for any sign of them. Finally, he spotted them huddled under a tree, miles from the village. "Sarah," he called, rushing to their side. "What are you doing out here? Don't you think about yourself? Think about Johnny." Sarah sobbed into his shoulder. "Amanda said you loved her and that people like us don't deserve to live." Jim's heart broke as he held them close. "Listen to me. Sarah, tomorrow, we're going to file for custody of Johnny. You're not going anywhere. We're a family now." The next day, Jim followed through on his promise. They married in a small, quiet ceremony, determined to build a life together. But their newfound happiness was soon threatened when Sarah's mother and stepfather showed up, demanding Sarah return home. "Get your things. We're going home," Vance ordered, his voice cold and commanding. Jim stepped forward, his voice steady. "She's not going anywhere. This is my wife, and Johnny is my son." Sarah's mother tried to argue, but Jim stood his ground, refusing to let them ruin the life they had built. In the end, they left in defeat, leaving Jim, Sarah, and Johnny to finally begin the life they had always deserved. If you enjoyed this story, please support me by giving it a thumbs up. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, dear friends.